A very humble thank you to General Hewley, for what he has done here for this organization and this establishment, and to the Board of Directors. Having served on the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation and worked along that side to build our hall for the Marine Corps, I know the toil and effort that goes into keeping establishments such as this running. So a hearty thank you to the board and all the people involved. It was June 8th of 1981 that I packed up my 1968 Volkswagen Bug and headed out the gates of Marine Corps Air Station Tustin, got on Pacific Coast Highway 101 and headed north up here to San Francisco to spend my one and only night in this fine establishment, because it almost broke me. That's how little money I had at the time. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that a lot has happened between then and now, but to be standing here in front of you as the Secretary of the Navy, I'm humbled and honored to be in this position. Polly and I jokingly say I call myself the accidental secretary. It was never a drive per se, but when Secretary Mattis called and said, would you fill the position, after I checked in with Polly and got the okay, the answer was swift and easy. But what I thought I'd do tonight, and if the microphone's working, because I'd much rather, is it working? Yeah, it is. I'd much rather be walking around. What I'd like to do tonight is tell you all what's going on with your Marine Corps, your Navy Marine Corps team. And if any of you have heard me speak before, that is how I refer to it, the Navy Marine Corps team, our forward deployed forces, our naval forces. We are entwined with the Navy. It's critical at this point for the security of our country, the mission of the Marine Corps and the mission of the Navy to be all aligned. You all might know that last year, Secretary Mattis came out with the National Defense Strategy, a clear-cut, three-point strategy on how we're going to face the world and keep this country safe and watch out for our resources and our interests around the globe. We have aligned ourselves to that strategy, and we funded that strategy. But let me give you a little precursor, because many of you have lived what I'm talking about. People ask me, they say, Mr. Secretary, what was the most shocking thing that you found when you arrived as Secretary? And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, I spent 10 years on the Defense Business Board, which was a board that consults the Secretaries of Defense on various issues they may have to see if there's civilian or private practice solutions that might help. So I kind of kept my toe in the water, and as General Neller says, you hung around the hoop and you paid attention. And I thought I knew what was going on in our Navy and Marine Corps. I had no idea as to the breadth and depth of the readiness hole that we had gotten ourselves into. And without looking back, and I don't like to point fingers, but I'll tell you one thing right now that everyone should pay attention to. The Title X civilian authorities that oversee our militaries are the circuit breakers that should prevent this. Your uniformed services, your Marine Corps, your Navy, your Air Force, your Army, are like thoroughbred horses. When put into the gate and that gate opens, they will run, and they will run their damnedest. And they will run it every time they're put in the gate and every time the gate is open. It's up to a responsible source to make sure that you don't run the feet off of them. And that's basically what happened. We'd flown the wings off the planes, we'd sailed the bottoms off the ship, and we shot the cannons, the rifling out of the cannons. The good news, between the monies we got in 17, the 18-19 budget, we have filled the gap. We have laid the foundation, ladies and gentlemen, to go forward. Your Marine Corps is properly resourced now on a base basis to go forward. What do I mean when I say base basis? The hole has been filled. We have a lot of room to go, and we will get there. The 20 numbers, we'll see what happens. 19 is being spent as we speak. But we're seeing the resources that we're seeing being put back into the services to get them where they need to be are happening. For those of you who are involved in the process, you know that this time of year is PBR. This is when we carve up assets and make trades. And this is usually when there's some pretty big haggling going on. There's backstabbing, there's back trading, there's all the nastiness you hear about in Washington. And here's what's fascinating that's going on right now inside your Pentagon. You have 3 service secretaries that meet regularly every 2 weeks without staff, which drives the building absolutely crazy. But we are doing more as 3 service secretaries, according to alumni who watch the building, as any service secretaries in the prior 18 years. And we're doing this on a collective basis because we realize that resources are not ending, not limitless. They are constrained, and we all together have to make sure that we're going to support the NDS in a coordinated manner. This is the kind of attitude that's going on inside the Pentagon right now. I could go on and tell you about conversations we're having about whether the carrier, the aircraft carrier in the United States Navy, has a life. We're going to get to that answer probably in the next week. But the fact that we're having this conversation now, checking the emotions outside the door, bringing in data-oriented arguments to support the strategies and the deployments and the needs of these assets are critical. Marine Corps Tactical Air. That agreement was laid down 12 years ago. I was told that actually some fisticuffs would happen when that MOU was brought out and discussed. We've had a 3-week discussion on it now. It's the most impressive conclusion. You'll see it soon. It's a great deal for the Marine Corps. It's a great deal for the Navy going forward. These are the kind of data-centric, non-emotional discussions we're having. And it's all for the betterment of the resources that are being put forward. The 3 principles that I came forward when I was secretary were people, capabilities, and process. And I truly mean it when we focus on people. We can have the best equipment, the best aircraft, the best tanks, the best handguns. Without people, they don't mean a thing. Major Hall, you deserve great credit. Because one of the things, we have 2 levers in the Marine Corps, the recruiting lever and the retention lever. And these are critical going forward in the next couple of years, because we must keep this Marine Corps at the ultimate stage of readiness with the ultimate character of people. We are making our numbers in recruiting. The headwinds are starting to increase as the economy increases and gets healthier. It's harder to fish from the same pool because the Air Force and the Army are also fishing from that same pool. We will make our numbers because we have a story to tell. Retention. We're going to make sure, and we've already set the wheels in process with the Commandant, that your Marines will always be challenged, not only physically, but they'll be challenged mentally and be given a path and the tools to support their career and how they're going to go forward in the Marine Corps. And I don't mean that means everybody stays 20 years. It's a high turnover organization, you all know that, but we want to make sure that everybody, while they're in, has the challenge, contributes to the cause, and then possibly they take an exit out of the Marine Corps. We now have the ability to bring them back in again. The latest NDAA, the 19 NDAA, allows us to adjust DOPMA, which was the old upper-out system that we have. We're getting more flexibility to keep quality people in our Corps. I want to close out and answer some questions because I have them here on my podium, and I'll get to them in a second, because it's better for me to hear questions from you than for me to just sit here and bloviate. But I want to tell you and close out with one thing that you all should know before I get to the questions. Last year was a tough year across both the Navy and the Marine Corps. Resources have been put back in place, as I've just told you. We've funded all accounts to either their maximum execution capability or their maximum industrial capability across the board, whether it be ships, whether it be aircraft, whether it be AAVs, whatever the case may be. We're in a good place. Your United States Marine Corps is much more ready tonight to bring the fight than it was a year ago, and rest assured, you shouldn't have to worry at all about that fact. So with that, I asked General Hewley if I could take him from the crowd, and he said, no, you know what we'll do? We'll actually write him down. I usually like to take him from the crowd and see where the fastballs come from, but here we go. Please describe the importance and the impact of the F-35B combat strike off the amphibs into Afghanistan. Its importance to the fifth-generation amphib mission. That's a great question. the F-35 is a very interesting beast. It is a game changer in the battlefield. Without a doubt, it's a game changer. It has a cost to it that is eye-watering. And the sustainment costs also are eye-watering. When I came on as secretary, having a business background was very interesting. We sat all our primes down and said, we have to clear the deck. There was some acrimonious feelings due to the fact that they'd been ground down for 10 years and CRs, continuing resolutions, had really impacted them. And I said, we have to work as partners. And what I mean by partners is you have to understand what I need, but just as importantly, I have to be a responsible client. I have to know what you need. Doesn't mean the Treasury doors are open, but I have to understand what you need. We've had that discussion with a lot of our suppliers, and we're making great progress. We still got some woodshed meetings we have to do. The F-35, we're really going to have to bang this thing down to get it into a cost control mode that benefits us and that we can afford over the long run. Amphibs. Marine Air is critical, and the Naval-Marine-Air relationship is critical. Now that we have vertical flight aircraft off the amphibs, we have an addition to the actual aircraft carrier, the traditional aircraft carrier. Amphibs are a critical component of the United States Marine Corps, and it is a focus of both the Commandant and I to increase our investment in amphibs. We got an extra ship in 18, we got another one in 19. We have to keep the pressure on and make sure we have that vessel available to us, because the new National Defense Strategy, ladies and gentlemen, is about 60% Pacific looking. China is our pacing competitor. That is where we're focused on. And as we look at the Pacific theater, the tyranny of distance, it's a poster child for it. It's a naval Marine Corps battle, Air Force coming in overhead, but those are the primary two forces that will be out there first. That is why the amphib will be a critical component of that team. Does the aircraft carrier have a future in the Navy? Can we get the money for the aircraft carrier if it isn't? No. Like I said, we're having some fascinating discussions on this topic, which, and I know I have some of my Navy brethren in the crowd here. That is the holy grail conversation. But we have laid out, the CNO has worked hard and with his staff to really lay out what's called the way forward with the new strategy, and it's called the way the Navy fights. And the carrier is a critical component of that. When you hear critics of the carrier say that it is just simply a huge target to be hit, there is more behind that in a defense statement than not. And there's a great article in Proceedings, if any of you really want to get into the techniques behind it and how we fight the carrier. But the carrier will be around for the foreseeable future, and what I mean by foreseeable future is it into the 2030s. You hear many times about this 355-ship Navy, which I completely subscribe to, considering its law. But it is simply one of the components of the portfolio that we have to manage for the Department of the Navy and Marine Corps. There are multiple weapon systems beside the ships. Please do not get myopically focused on how we're approaching 355 ships. Also should be asking how we're getting aircraft numbers, readiness back up in the air. What are we doing with vertical lift? What are we doing with AAVs? What are we doing with troop transports? There is a whole portfolio that we're trying to manage, and it seems to get drowned out every now and then with 355 ships. Know that we are focusing on every aspect of what our Marines need to bring the fight to the enemy. Concerning the organization of the I Love Me wall, what is your model of the H-46 and your squadron play inside my office from all frog drivers? Well, that's one of those questions you kind of pause on, so I get to do something that's really neat. I get to turn around and say, I would like everyone from Helicopter Marine Medium Squadron 161 who's ever served in to please stand right now. My fellow squadron mates. Please know that I received a wood flag, a wood American flag from another friend who's in the sniper unit, but it's all wood carved, burnished. It's a beautiful flag, but in the center of it is an HMM 161 logo. So you ask where it is. It's sitting right behind my desk, and on my stand-up desk, I will add that there is a 46 model from the museum that is on loan to me. Sir, I got to make sure I got the name right here. Sir, could you please ask Colonel Olinger to marry me? No signature. This could change the world. Okay, I hope that's changing the world right now. Last one. I have noted that enlisting housing at Camp Pendleton, construction has ceased. With California housing prices, will it resume? Our enlisted families have a quality of life housing issue. For those of you who obviously read the paper out here, and I'll tell you what's fascinating about being Secretary of the Navy. One day you're dealing with whether the aircraft carrier has a future. The next day you're dealing on the fact that we might have a dairy farm, and then you're dealing with housing. It's a fascinating job in that regard. You never get bored. In fact, I find myself sometimes saying, we own that, we do that. But housing is a real issue, and I know there's been some stories out here, specifically in Camp Pendleton, about our private partner relationship down there. It is a key important fact to us, and we are keeping an eye on it. When I say us, the Commandant, myself, and the Sergeant Major. It is critical that we have quality housing for all our Marines, and we're working on that. That story down there, I ask you all to dig in a little deeper and ask some more questions. We have plaintiff lawyers that are trolling down there, actually asking Marines if they'd like to make a quick buck, because if you do some things to your unit, we'll photograph them and run a story on it, and you can get a claim. We just discovered that last week. That's tangential. The fact of the matter is we have to make sure the housing is quality, and that is front and center, I can guarantee you. So I'm going to close out now, because I'm in the way between you and a bar. But I want to tell you, no matter what you're hearing about various stories that arc out about our readiness, it is key, paramount for us to increase where it is. It's at a good place now. It needs to be in a better place. We're getting there. There's always room for improvement. And I'll also tell you, in light of our conversations about the Navy Marine Corps team, having hung around the hoop for 10 years, I've watched the Marine Corps and the Navy and the relationship that's there. And I'll leave you on another great note. Between General Neller and Admiral Richardson, the relationship between the Navy and the Marine Corps is an all-time high, both in funding. It really is. It is fantastic. Strategically, tactically, funding, resource allocation, the Navy Marine Corps team couldn't be tighter than it is right now. And every Marine and every sailor and Marine in here ought to be tremendously proud of that, because we have two great leaders. They will be shifting up this summer, but I'll tell you what, we have a bench that'll make your eyes water. And it's going to be great to work with the next crew. So what I want to say is thank you. Happy birthday, Marines. Semper Fi.
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary, for spending time and sharing your comments with us. We have an appropriately priced, it's actually the finest token of our appreciation in its price class. We have a little, should show you guys, we have a little commemorative plaque, but it has the copy of the original Iwo Jima Memorial stamp.
Wow.
So.
Excellent, Rick. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Back when you could get something for 3 cents.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, folks.